So in spite of the title of the presentation, let me tell you, this is not about medicine. I will disappoint you. It's not on programming. There will be only one code line, which is not too interesting. Now, this is a talk on how we work. I'm Nicolás Cerrini, and this is where I work for the company X, but that is not the case. I have a couple of brands, but that is not the point here. So I define my work as a freelance web programmer, but aside from that, nobody really understands what this is. So you have to explain this to someone who is from another area. I say that I am self-employed and I do something on the computer or something of the kind. So I wanted to become a programmer.
And like so many, I thought that I had to go to university, so I did. I became an engineer. But from the very first week of class, I remember that a professor said, you take this into account and this and that, and then you'll go, you'll look for a job and you go to a consultant, you have interviews. And at the time, it sounded quite normal. But all along my studies, the only thing that the professor said, we assumed that they had much more experience. The idea was that we would be employed by somebody from 9 to 6. So something didn't quite make sense. So I took a job, but I felt that I couldn't have much impact on what I was doing. I was given a task and I did it. I never saw the client. I didn't know whether what I was delivering was used later on, but I really wasn't happy about it. So I quit. And looking at it with hindsight, I had no idea what I was thinking, nor did I know of anybody who had done it before. Nobody told me what problems I might face in the future. Instead of going on with my routine, what I offer you is to take the red pill and to see what the future has in store. You don't need Morpheus to come and offer you, because it's really out there. It depends on whether we are interested in it. So there are not very concise terms in Spanish, but in English it's called freelancing. And really, one feels free about working like this. A good thing is that there's no need for you to wear any sneakers. We can wear our slippers. The first thing that I'm going to tell you is a number of myths about working like this. So if the conversation goes on, and where I said, well, I'll work on my own, so people are going to tell me, oh, you work where and when you want. And I say, well, yes, but it's not that I don't work. So I'm going to draw an analogy between being an employee with a blue pill and working freelance, that is the red pill. So one of the differences is having a fixed working hours. Do we have working hours? Who knows? Usually that ends up being this. One works from 9 to 6 p.m. and the other one 24 times 7. Always, at all times. It shouldn't be like that. So it's important for us to admit it. and to put some limits to it. And then the next thing is where. Instead of going to the office every day, always to the same office, always at the same time, we're going to have to create our own working place. It's going to be at home, a free room, or it's going to be a hall or at a cafeteria. The other thing that varies is a stable salary or an uncertain salary. Instead of getting paid your salary from the 1st of the month to the 5th, it's going to be to collecting some money someday, and not just the amount. The problem is when, because a long time may go by between one payment and the other. Something needs to be clarified. Uncertain doesn't mean more or less. Another good thing about being an employee is that you have colleagues. So you can always discuss things with your colleagues. You can compare. And we don't. By default, we are alone, and we have to make the decisions the best way possible. Your cat is not your working pal, even if he appears there while you're working, but he won't give you his feedback. So somehow you have to replace that. Then you have the benefits. Employees usually have vacations, they have sick leaves, or they have medical coverage, and we don't. Unfortunately, we have to pay for that ourselves. Then, this is not always like this, but employees are usually assigned to a project for a certain period of time, while we have n number of projects. You never know. So, freelancing. This is the only code line. How do you do things when you start? Somebody told me the other day that it was like moving from your family's house to your own, and finding that there are many, many things that need to be done that nobody had told you about. Not everything was nice. You also had to do your washing. So to start, you have to do a number of things that you should have from day zero. Something that sounds like a four-letter word, but you have to find out what the tax issue is, and the best. You have to consult PCA, and because if you don't do things right from the very beginning, then things get difficult. And then we have to do the accounting. Are we going to have a PCA? We'll have a spreadsheet where at least write down who has to pay when and what for. Maybe at the beginning you don't do it, and anything may happen. Then, this may sound trivial. There's no need to create payment gateways, but how do you have an account at the bank? If you receive a check, do you check whether it's right? After defining how to contact the client, because there's a lot of Facebook and Twitter, but probably it's no good for this. Are we going to have a regular landline, one of the old ones? Are we going to give the clients our mobile phone? I did it, and then I regretted it a lot. Are we going to have a professional email that's not just anything? I remember a friend that was called Condecoraciones 18. Well, that won't be any good. Rompecorazones 18, heartbreak. So we have to define this. This is an option, just an option. I see that it's very common that people tend to decide to do this with partners. There's nothing bad about it, but make sure you check the objectives of each and the expectations that each has, and how you're going to make the arrangements, how much each is going to work. Because if you don't check that, then don't get a partner, because it gets worse and worse, and you are going to lose a friend. Then, someday you'll have to consider branding, or at least for your business cards, something to trying to promote and to make yourself known. And it is here that you say, well, am I going to program or to interpret or to develop or to do this or that all day? Well, not really. You need to meet a number of roles. It's like wearing different hats. This is a comic that's really fun, and it's really like this. In your every day, you'll have to do many different things. For instance, and this is a very subjective list of what things you'll need to do. First of all, you'll need to be the professional you want to be. In my case, it would be a developer, but it could be something else. Then you're going to be the vendor. You are going to have to go and get the clients get together, write an email to follow a proposal, and it takes a lot of time. Then you'll need to be the administrative of a company. Sometimes to receive a payment, you need to move around, you have to do a lot of things, and then somehow you have to administer your projects, and you have to direct that business. So when we have that structure, what we need to get is those clients. And this is an element that's very special, because on the one hand, they're going to be those that provide the funds for all this, but they can be either your allies or your foes. So what kind of relationship you get with them, it's very important. I think that the good clients that consider you as an equal and not as a slave. But there's a different working relationship, because they may decide not to hire you anymore. But it's also up to you whether you want to work with them. So it would be the most similar thing to giving them the sack.
So the different types of clients. You have the direct clients. They have their needs and call you to solve something. And then you have the agencies, someone who sells to certain clients different packages of services, and they're going to hire you to do part of what they sell. And I like to include that because these sometimes are long-lasting relationships, and one can also outsource the issue of handling our own clients directly. And then you have other freelancers who are independent workers. Some people might have too much work or are a profession that is related to yours, for example, a programmer with a designer. So what are the tasks that you have to do to obtain these clients? So we had to put on our hat as a salesperson. We did networking. So there's no way around this. You have to use all the people you know, or come to events such as this, or to those places where our potential clients meet. Then once again, branding. If you're going to have a site or a blog or something that attracts traffic to the work we do. And then you have the marketplaces. This can be totally subjective, or Elance, Workana, Odesk. I don't have a lot of experience with that option, but I see that it takes longer to establish the first contact until you start working. So then we'll have that first contact with our customer. And although it might seem at first that the objective of that contact is just that the contact tells us what they need, and that is a lot too, but then we need to know more about them and that they know how we work and tell them our rules. So this is the moment when we have to try and establish a good relationship from the outset, because later on it is more difficult to come back to the starting point. And this is also a point where we have to be cautious, because with time one learns how to detect potential problems. So do we have a problem in terms of communication? Do we find it difficult to understand each other? Or does the customer argue about the issues, about the cost? Sometimes they don't really know what they really need. So these are warning signals to tell us, well, do we really want to work with this client or with this project? Is this a zombie client, a zombie project? The good thing about this is that you can decide that you are not interested. And then the question that I'm usually asked is, well, are your fees fine? How much should you charge for your work? And to tell the truth, there is no correct answer to this. This is quite a complex issue. But we can group the fees into two different categories. For example, a fixed amount for every job you do or for each stage of the work, or you're going to charge by the hour. So there is a significant difference in this sense, because the risk of having miscalculated the effort you would need for a job might benefit the client or yourself. So we take off our hat as a salesperson and put on the administrative hat. So now, in this role, we have to define a whole series of conditions that the client has to accept so that we can carry out our task. There will be a contract, there will be written conditions, and how will we formalize a relationship? What means of payment will be used? And this might seem trivial, but this has to do with the effort of collecting and when. And then regarding this, will there be an advance payment? Well, yes, that should be made, because we can speak a lot and discuss things a lot, but when the customer does an advance payment, we know we're really being serious about this, or at least we think that we have a serious customer. And then what we will deliver, how many revisions, how many reviews, etc. But each one of us has to define these conditions from the outset, because these are different. These are very important to make things work. So with all this information, we prepare a proposal or a cost estimation. So it is the other way around compared to an interview for a job, because we are the ones who will propose what we will do and how much this will cost. And after all this, then we'll put on the hat we like most and we'll get down to brass tacks, to our work. So maybe all this process involved a couple of days. It's not that long. And all along that time, there is something that might be a source of conflict. This has happened to me and to many of the people I've spoken to. And this is that we tend to forget to communicate with the customer and tell them the current status of the work. If a client would hire an employee, then at any moment they can go to the office and say, hey, how are you going? I remember when I used to be an employee, they asked me, well, how are you doing? How are you getting on? So in this case, we have to tell our customers the status of a work because even before they ask us, because if they send us a mail, it is because they have been asking themselves for quite some time. So it is important for us to tell them. And now let us say the following. If you answer an email to a client, to a friend at 3 in the morning, you're not being responsible with your peers. And this is to do with a presentation made by FOCA, because this reinforces the myth that we work round the clock. Well, I don't want to work round the clock. And the tip is that there are tools to send an email that is not at 3 in the morning, and that it might seem to be that you're sending it in a reasonable time. It's preferable for them not to realize, because then they are going to expect that you are awake at any time of the day. So time will go by, and we will finish that project. Great, wonderful. But that is not the end of the story. There are still a couple of tasks pending. Collect. It might sound stupid, but it's not. Are we going to continue with the project? Are we going to offer anything else? Are we going to put on a salesperson's hat and see if we can continue? This client might recommend us. So if you do a good job, then they will pass on your name to other people they know. And then you can stop for a moment and reflect on your work and say, well, did I do a proper estimation? Did I do things well from our point of view? Is this a customer we want to continue working with? So once all this cycle is over, you say, well, let's look for a new project. Now, this just seems very nice, like a cascade process where you go from one stage to the following. Well, that is the ideal world. Now, the truth is that you normally work on numerous projects at the same time, and each project is at a different stage, and this looks more or less like this. The thing is, it's not two. Very often you are on your own. So you have to wear the different hats and for the different projects and do lots of changes and shifts in the chart all along the day. And this can be quite exhausting. So we can invent a term which is called the level of multiplexation. And it looks something like this. So this juggler is different from the previous one because we don't know how many balls are up in the air. It's not the same if you have only 3 balls or if you have 5 more that are not in the picture. So I think that we have to look for our comfort zone. It might be only 1 project. It can be 2 projects. That's something personal. Now, linked to this, well, maybe at the beginning you don't have the stability of having a project all the time. So there might be some gaps. So economically speaking, we have to be able to face those moments. So you might stop and see, well, where am I heading with all this? So you have to define a plan. And for that, you have to define objectives. You wear the different hats, and now you wear your director's hat. You say, well, what am I looking for? What am I aiming at? Do I want to specialize in a given area? Do I want to have more or better customers? Do I want to earn more or less? Do I want to work more or do I want to work less? This all depends on each person. And linked to this, we also have to think about things such as training. So we have to take time off for training or come to activities such as this here. And then we have to do networking. We have to look for other colleagues we can work with, people we can set up a bigger group with. We can speak about the different problems that we have, and this is something that is very valuable. And at some moment in time, we can say, well, let us prepare a project, let us change things, let us change directions. And something that I have to highlight: remember to rest. It is very easy to say, well, we take on lots and lots of responsibilities, and work is not just everything, and there comes a moment where we work too much. We can maintain that rhythm for a couple of days, weeks, or whatever, and then there comes a moment where we have to sit down and say, well, nothing comes to our minds. And if you want to look at this from the financial point of view or from the point of view of your work, this is not something that is profitable, because if you're working at a given rhythm and then you have to come to a stop, then that is not good, because you have other commitments as well. So all this can be summed up in being a good boss of your own self. We have to like our boss. So, to wrap up, what is all this freelancing about? This is an option that is available in many professions. For example, programming. This requires perseverance, it requires responsibility, and the will to do things. And I referred to a number of myths: the place, the working hours, the income. And then we have a series of roles. We have to be the professional we want to be. We have to be the director, the project manager, the salesperson, and the administrative assistant. We are going to need a plan. So if you didn't pay attention, if you got lost along the way, or if you got bored, think about these 4 things if you want to do something. Define a structure, a legal structure, your own working hours, your space. Remember to have a proper communication with the customers you're working with. Remember to persevere, because there will be many days where you feel you want to go on doing this. Those times happen, but something good follows always. And then this is only work. This doesn't have to fill up your whole life. So this takes us back to the beginning. What I'm proposing is an adventure. You're going to be able to develop lots and lots of skills, like many of these roles. And you're going to have less routine and lots of freedom. And this freedom is fundamental to be happy with what you do. So I ran the risk and I took the red pill. What about you? Thank you.